Welcome to Show Me Sports Legacies. I'm your host, Jeff Crowley, here with my co-host, Chris Hockenfels. Today we're talking, what are we talking today? We're talking baseball.
We are back, and we're talking baseball. It's an annual tradition around here to have a baseball podcast. We have a couple great baseball fans as guests today. Looking forward to it. Can always talk baseball, don't need a podcast, but love when we get the chance to talk about the greatest game.
We could talk about baseball all day long. And today we're talking about Missouri's love affair with baseball because it's on both sides of the state, and it really covers the whole state, the rural and the urban areas of Missouri. You've got the Springfield Cardinals in the south to anchor Cardinal fandom. You've got a kind of a split up here in the north between old-time Cardinal fans and younger Cardinal fans. One of them is going to join us today. It's just a love affair with baseball. You always see the attendance numbers, and we just hit above our weight.
Right, and I think the satellite and cable used to have their regional sports networks, and the line between Cardinals and Royals went right through North Missouri. So there was a point where you could actually live 5 miles from your neighbor and they get Cardinals games and you might get Royals games or vice versa. So there's always a split. It's not right down the middle of the state. There's plenty of fans for both, but it is unique because not every state Major League Baseball has two teams, and those teams have become rivals. So unique for Missouri, but really kind of cool.
I don't know if you remember when Milan had a McDonald's.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And the promo at that McDonald's was a St. Louis Cardinals promo. 30 miles from here, it's Cardinals territory.
Yeah,
Interesting.
And seems like there was a stretch there too where one was having success and the other one wasn't, and it was hard to get the two together. And it happened in '85 in the middle '80s, and right now both teams have gotten off to a great start. So hopefully we're going to see more of both teams competing in their division, having success, so their fan base has something to get excited about.
Okay, 2 weeks ago we had a staff outing.
Right. We took everybody. We spared no expense.
It was quite a crowd. We went down to the ball game, and it happened to be on a pretty interesting day to see Royals baseball. There was an announcement that morning at Crown Center, and we're going to play this little bit that we put together. Here we go.
So I thought one of my co-hosts' many good ideas is an outing for the entire crew at the Royals game today on Wednesday, the 22nd of April. I don't know how he came up with this in the budget for the whole crew to come. But
no expenses spared. We brought the entire production crew, the light, the sound people, all of the administrators, all the staff, everybody that we could get into the bus to get here. Turns out there's just two of us, so it's not so bad. But
Yeah.
It's a great day at the ball game.
I mean, the caterer was a little disappointed with the numbers, but Joe's KC came through.
Right.
The Z-Man sandwich.
We got our Z-Man sandwich. We've got 5 homers so far in this game, and we've got big news coming out of Royals fandom and kingdom.
It's absolutely big news. We're talking downtown baseball at the home of the Crown, the Hallmark Crown Center area, for the new location for the new downtown stadium.
What a great combination, the Hallmark Channel and Royals baseball. Men and women everywhere celebrate the Royals moving downtown. What a great location. I'm excited for Kansas City Royals that they're staying in Missouri and that they will have a new home in 2031.
So, everybody gripes about parking, and my only gripe today as we came in was that guy that kept asking every stadium attendant at every intersection before he finally found his way, meandered off to his appropriate parking lot.
Well, there's only,
my goodness.
Could this be our 6th home run? Oh, I think it's staying in the ball.
Oh, doggone it.
Bobby Witt flies out to deep center field at the 410 mark. But they have like 8,000 workers out there pointing you every step of the way. We just happen to be behind the one person that needed guidance to get to their parking spot.
Breaking ground on the 27th and new stadium in 31. Is that what we're talking about?
I think so. I think the lease runs out in maybe 2030 here at Kauffman Stadium. Beautiful stadium. but I think a nice change, a great venue. You've got Power and Light District close by Union Station, Brown Center, the new KC streetcar. Lots of positives going downtown. Be a good vibe, and hopefully in 2031, the Royals will still be competitive and be a fun team to watch.
And I'm pretty sure the hot dog race will still happen. So we're taking all the traditions.
We got to take the fountains and the Crown Vision and all the good stuff that go with Kauffman Stadium. We have, I think, the top 2 or 3 architectural sports firms in the country that call Kansas City home. So I'm sure we'll get a great engineer and architectural drawing from those people soon, and we'll know just what it's going to look like downtown Kansas City for baseball.
That rendering was pretty sweet today. A lot of blue pointed north toward the downtown buildings, close to Union Station, all that kind of stuff. I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, the backdrop looks to be the shot of the Kansas City skyline with Bartle Hall, Kauffman Center, and the Power and Light building. And that'll be beautiful along with the fountains, I'm sure. It should be picturesque and, really all come together. Kansas City's got the World Cup this summer, and then we'll be gearing up for 2031 and a new home for the Royals and for the Chiefs.
Okay, well, that's our report sitting out here just a little outside of first base at Kauffman Stadium and hoping for, we need to get off talking here and get our rally caps on.
Rally caps on 3. Go Royals.
Our rally caps did not do the job that day. The Royals were still kind of in that losing phase, and they were just starting to break out of it a little bit, and they've done a lot better lately. But it was a lot of fun. By next year, I don't know, we might double our staff. Who knows?
Right. If it's in the budget, I'll talk to the president and CEO. I've got connections. See if we can't get more pushed into the budget for coming up soon. But it was a great trip, and it was fun to get out and maybe do a little road trip for the podcast and talk baseball, and kind of a lead into our show today.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of history in Missouri with our professional baseball teams. We've had 2 teams since 1969 when the Kansas City Royals were awarded an expansion team. And St. Louis has been a fixture in the National League since 1892. With 19 pennants, 11 World Series championships, they are a storied franchise. From Dizzy Dean, Rogers Hornsby, Stan Musial to Bob Gibson and Albert Pujols, the Cardinals have been legendary. That's all you can say. The Royals have not experienced the sustained success of the Redbirds, but have claimed 2 World Series championships of their own and had a Hall of Famer, George Brett, as a symbol of the franchise. Both teams have catchers who may enter the Hall of Fame in the near future with Yadier Molina and Salvador Perez. North Missouri's always had access to both of these franchises, and people that attend personally and local radio coverage that has covered these areas for decades. In some cases, older generations grew up with the Cardinals and the younger ones on the Royals. So you've got not splits in families, but, it blossomed out. Tonight, we'll explore this obsession with baseball in Missouri with Seth Herrold, longtime sports editor, the Republican Times newspaper in Trenton. He's a huge Royals fan, and he is dressed appropriately tonight in the studio. I want to point that out. Kameron Cool, assistant principal of Trenton Middle School, and always representing Cardinals pride in the hallways at Trenton Middle School and around town. Guys, welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to be here.
It's fun. We talked about this. It's just a chance for 4 guys to sit around and talk about baseball, and I love it. So, Seth, you wrote a column in 2010. It was called Love of the Game, and it was a Play of the Week column. And you talked about when it locked in for you that baseball was your sport, or what gripped you that made you love baseball throughout your life. Tell us just a little bit about a snippet about that.
I'll actually be pretty interested to see what I wrote in 2010, because I'm not sure I can remember exactly what I put down there.
You talked about coming into a game and closing it out, a Little League game, I believe, and you won the game, and all of a sudden they turned you into the primary pitcher the following week, and you didn't have quite the success in the second week, but somehow that win carried you through, and you were able to, absorb the lesson that we talk about a lot in this podcast, which is that in sports you fail as often or more than you succeed, but it puts you back to work and you love the sport. And it seemed like you said that week kind of crystallized your love of the sport.
Yeah, I do remember that. That was kind of traumatic, that second outing I had. Probably wouldn't have been so bad, but after I closed that first game out, I spent hours in the garage throwing strikes into a tire, and I was feeling pretty confident going into my first career start, and my first career start turned out to be my last career start.
Back to the bullpen.
Yeah, that, and they shipped me back out to right field where I should have been the whole time.
Hey, teams need right fielders. That's all I'm going to say about that. Do you guys have any experience? You have any experience pitching?
I didn't pitch a lot when I was a kid, just because I was left-handed. Every now and then they would throw me out there just to give a team a different look. But I didn't pitch a lot. I played mostly outfield. Played like with my older brother and his friends a lot. And so, of course, when you're younger and you're smaller, a lot of times that means you go to the outfield. But we took that. Me and one of my buddies who also had older brothers, we just were like, hey, outfield's important. and we loved it out there.
So when you're a kid in the era that you guys grew up in, and Chris and I grew up in an earlier decade, and it seems to me that you had to search for information about your team. I mean, it was always, the games were always on, but other things around the game were a little bit harder to find. You had to find a newspaper. You had to subscribe to the sporting news or something. So where did you get your news?
Well, when I was a kid growing up, we always had subscriptions to Sports Illustrated and the sporting news. And later on there for a while, we were subscribed to ESPN, the magazine.
Well, there you go.
So we constantly had magazines coming in the mailbox all the time, and we would go through those things like crazy and get everything we could out of them. But that was a lot of it. And then I always remember Sunday afternoons, we would always get a Des Moines Register with the big peach was their sports section, because it was printed on peach paper. I don't know why it was different than the rest of the paper, but we would always grab that, and they always had a really good sports section. So that was pretty much it. That, and then the radio.
Yeah, I just remember same thing. My grandpa Jim, he just grew up loving the Cardinals, was a huge baseball guy, and he always got us ESPN the magazine and Sports Illustrated. We always loved, and I miss it so much, Baseball Tonight. I just loved Baseball Tonight when I was a kid. You know, you're also, if you're watching a sporting event, you're watching the bottom line and looking for stats and looking for what the other teams do. You know, you're waiting to see. But also listen to a lot of the radio. Local sports always told all the final scores and big stats, and just find it in it, like you said, anywhere you can. It was just fun to try to seek out any baseball information you could, so that you could talk about it with your friends and try to kind of one up them on what they knew going into that day at school.
Were you into trading cards and those kind of things?
Yeah. When I was a kid growing up in Nebraska, there was like a farm store. It was kind of like what an Orscheln's would have been, but it was whatever the version was up in Plattsmouth, Nebraska. And they always had Topps baseball cards at the checkout register. And every time we went in there, my dad would buy me a pack of cards, and I would get to the car, rip them open and look through them and everything. But yeah, I had a lot of baseball cards growing up.
That's awesome. So my grandpa Gary he was an auctioneer, and so I would get, a lot of times I'd go to his auctions and help him, and a lot of times I would get a lot of really cool lots of cards. So I'd just get these big lots of cards, and the amount of time my brother and I we'd go through them, and we'd sort them out, and put them in their protective cases if we found one. Of course, not knowing how much any of these were actually worth, and kind of makes me sad looking back knowing I don't have a lot of those now. But at the same time, it was just so much fun. We never did a ton of trading, but we would kind of create our own team and then kind of put them up against each other and see, who would win in this team, and then we'd mix them up and try to find a new team. And it was just so much fun. Again, just kind of creating your own games with those cards, and a lot of time with baseball cards.
I used to hang out on the patio with my grandpa and his friends, and there would be adult beverages occasionally. And when we were growing up, you weren't really supposed to talk that much, when you get around the older generation. And really the only thing I could contribute to those conversations was baseball stats. And I would memorize stuff out of the Kansas City Star. So I would know that somebody was hitting 278 and had 2 doubles on Thursday. So that would probably bump up their average. And every now and then they'd turn to me and they go, Jeff, what's so-and-so hitting? And that was the only time I could talk, frankly. I don't know what your experience was with.
Well, my brother-in-law and I were big baseball fans. So right out of high school and into college, we used the baseball encyclopedia. I don't know if you remember that, but they used to put out the baseball encyclopedia, which was a book, a huge book, probably 4 inches thick, that had every player that ever played or pitched and their career stats. And we would play games like, all right, come up with a 70s lineup. And so we would, like, over the week, we would look and say, okay, I'm taking, George Brett and his year in 1978. And then we would put these lineups together. And then we would do the 80s or maybe all time. And we would just spend hours. We each had our own baseball encyclopedia. And we would go through there and look at the stats and look at the players. And you could tell if they were in the Hall of Fame or not. They'd have that notated. It was just a way to pass time, just like baseball cards where you could flip it over. And when you guys talked earlier about the magazines, we had the actual box score. Like, I sometimes wonder when people are on their apps and they hit the button box score, if they've ever really got a paper and looked at the actual box score. When you used to get the next day, we would flip through those and there would be all the scores from the night before, except for West Coast, because they could never get those in on time. So sometimes they would have like a Padres or Dodgers and then not have it because they didn't get them on time. But all the East Coast scores were there and you could look at the stats. So just always a way to find baseball.
Okay, I've got some audio here, and this is a good buddy of mine from Dallas, Texas currently, but he grew up in Webster Groves in St. Louis. And I'm going to break this into two parts, but this first part I'm going to play for you is just kind of him talking about what Cardinals baseball used to mean to him. And he's probably 60-ish, to give you some perspective of the time frame. Okay, let's see if we can get this rolling. Sitting here in a comfortable room talking to my friend Jeff Rivas from Dallas, Texas. But before that, he's a Missouri guy. He comes from the St. Louis side of the state over at Webster Groves. What is it about St. Louis and the hill and the whole Cardinal history that's there that sucks in all youngsters in the St. Louis area?
I'll tell you, I think growing up there, it was always on the air. It didn't matter if you were with friends or with family or with whatever group of people you were with. If a Cardinal ball game was on, it seemed to draw everybody together. And the common thread in that, of course, was somebody like Jack Buck, the voice of the Cardinals, and Harry Carey, who also was in the announcer's booth with him. But for me, it was always Jack Buck, because I guess, back in the 60s and 70s, he was somebody I could relate to. My grandpa, my dad, my mom, my brothers, my buddies, everybody would listen to Jack Buck, be it, like I said, at a barbecue or in the backyard or as a course of a normal day. You'd be listening to Cardinal baseball, mainly because there was nothing else on. We didn't have the internet and didn't have all the distractions of our phones like we do today. Our distraction in release from the daily grind was baseball. And we were lucky enough to have pretty good baseball teams back in the 60s and 70s. But an excellent broadcasting crew and an excellent bunch of guys that could tell stories.
So that kind of thing, I was always aware at any point in the day how many hours we were until the ball game started.
Absolutely.
And it's like you just calibrated everything off of that. And I go back to the Kansas City A's, and they were horrendous. But Monty Moore was the broadcaster, and he was always enthusiastic. And I would literally stay up for those West Coast games and put that transistor radio under the pillow and act like I was asleep and listen to them. And they were hopelessly behind by the third or fourth inning, but I would try to hang in there. So it was just part of a fabric of life.
Yeah. One of my favorite memories, I about get emotional even like talking about it, is going out into the backyard. We had a van that you could put the back end up and turn the radio on, and we'd hit fly balls and listen to Cardinal baseball. And it was that's just a great way to spend a day. And my dad, the amount of fly balls he hit, and we'd go until we just couldn't see the ball anymore. And then we'd go finish listening to the Cardinal game inside. And it's just special. Like, I don't know, like your buddy said, like it just brings people together. I mean, it didn't matter where we were going. If we were in the car, it was on. If we got to Grandma and Grandpa's, we found a radio and turned it on there. Just special, and makes me miss that time.
It is a great memory. How about you, Seth?
Yeah, I remember many nights going out to stack hay in the tractor, and you just turn the Royals game on, and you're stacking hay listening to the Royals. And Dad, he used to lease some ground down by Pattonsburg, which was quite a ways away, and he had just bailed it up that day. And I said, I'll run down and stack that for you tonight. And he was like, it's too late. Don't worry about it. Well, the Royals were playing in Seattle that night, so I knew they were going to start at 9 o'clock. So I went and I stacked hay all night and listened to that entire game out there in the field. And that was just a really fun memory for me. I always enjoyed any chance I got to listen to the Royals on the radio if I could.
Yeah, and that's something I hope they remember it as they get older. But every night I kind of sit in my boys' bedroom as they fall asleep, and we talk about the day and stuff. But we always turn on a baseball game and like listen to the radio still. And that's one thing I like about the MLB app. It's not just the TV; you can still get the radio going on there. And we did that last night. You know, like we do that just about every night we can, and it's just special. I don't know, like I love the fact that we're still my boys love baseball, and that's something we still do is listen to the radio.
And, you know, with the Cardinals, you had Camo X, and that thing would blast out, and I would get it on a fishing trip in Minnesota.
Well, and your friend mentioned Harry Caray, which I'm sure most people associate with the Cubs, which makes sense. But I remember my grandpa had these really cool records of some famous Cardinal games. And so when I'd go visit him, I would listen to those on his record player, and they were so cool. And he told me about one. It wasn't on the records, but he said one of his favorite calls from Harry Caray when he was a Cardinal announcer was, "High fly ball, deep left field, and the shortstop hauls it in." And he just said it was like that all the time with him. It was just he and Jack were great together because Jack was obviously just a legend at being who he was, but Harry was always a character.
Okay, so let's talk. Who's your favorite player growing up?
My favorite player, my first memory of a player that I really liked and thought was just awesome was actually Ray Langford. But my favorite player growing up, just because, again, I played center field when I was a kid and bought into the idea that the outfield was really, really cool, and that was Jim Edmonds. I mean, just some of the catches he made, his ability to cover ground when he really wasn't the most athletic guy, but he just always made plays. His most famous catch is actually probably when he was for the Angels at Kauffman.
At Kauffman,
right. That, you know, the diving over the head catch, over the shoulder catch is just iconic. Growing up with Jim Edmonds, you know, man in center field was just pretty cool, and obviously a great bat too. Easy answers, of course. I've gotten to see legends like Pujols and Molina, but there was nobody cooler than Jim Edmonds to me when I was a kid.
Standing. Okay, Seth.
Well, it's got to be Alex Gordon for me. I mean, when you're a kid from Nebraska and he's a kid from Nebraska and we were both born in 1984, I mean, you're just naturally drawn to a guy like that. And just the way he played the game, I always was just a big fan of his. And when the Royals made the postseason in 2014, he started growing out a postseason beard, so I started doing it too. And then he just kept wearing it, and that's why I wear a beard to this day.
That's
just
awesome.
Just to kind of follow in his footsteps. So I was fortunate enough. I got to meet him one time, and they say never meet your heroes, but he is the coolest guy ever to hang out with, and gave me some fantasy baseball advice for my team that I wasn't sure looking back was maybe the best advice, but the fact that he took time to give some random guy fantasy baseball advice was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, he's been my guy since I bought a number 7 t-shirt jersey the night he debuted on opening night at the K. So
that's awesome.
His 2015 home run is probably right up there, at least one of the two biggest home runs in Royals history in my mind.
Yeah,
with George Brett's in 1980 to defeat the Yankees, which was a good one too.
Shout out to Gordo, because he's one of my, if not my all-time favorite too. And I was a Nebraska fan, still am, and he checked all the boxes. And I'm glad he got his moment too, because he was not always your perennial all-star that hit 300. He wasn't Chipper Jones that was end up with 500 homers and 1,600 RBIs, but he played the right way. He was always in the lineup. He was one of those guys you could pencil in. He was going to work hard, great clubhouse guy, a true Royal all the way to the end, and got his moment on the biggest stage in the biggest game of his life. So shout out to your Gordo call, and big Edmonds fan too. And I was a big, and still am, big Albert Pujols fan for a long time. Followed Albert, which has its own dynamic when you're a big Royals fan, but are trying to, mix in that your favorite player at the time is a Cardinal. But the Cardinals were always in the postseason when he was playing, and the Royals weren't at that time. And it was easy to follow Albert because he was also a great player who did all the right things and checked all the boxes. So Albert, we'll give some praise to Albert Pujols and his career. And of course, 700 home runs is pretty good too.
It certainly is.
Just a little.
That's a lot. Amos Otis is my favorite player. There was something cool about Amos Otis. He was kind of revolutionary, and they caught the ball with one hand, which happened to be his glove hand, which I can't imagine was a weird thing back then, but it was indeed considered outrageous that he didn't use both hands to catch the ball. And that's kind of how I like to catch the ball. So that's about the only thing we shared in common. He was cool. He was smooth. He was athletic. I just thought AO was the first star of the Royals franchise, to be honest. Just gave you the sense of possibility that this team could be more than an expansion team at that time, which was very important. So I'm going to roll with the last part of this audio from our friend Jeff Rivas again. And here he is talking about his life as a teenager, as a caddy. He just happened to be a caddy at the country club where Jack Buck showed up to play golf quite a lot. So here's a little bit of story about that.
Bring his own guests, and they were usually the umpires or maybe even the manager from the opposing team. And he would make sure that those umpires shook the hands of every kid that wanted to shake their hand. So he'd bring over Dutch Rennert, for instance, and say, Dutch, I want you to meet my boys. And there'd be 60 kids, all just with wide eyes and smiles and looking at this big umpire and saying, oh my gosh, this guy's a superstar. Or Stan Musial. And he'd say, Stan, why don't you just go over there and say hi to all my boys? So Stan would come over and he goes, hey guys, how you doing? And, oh, great, Stan, how are you? And he'd go, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Stan Musial always was wonderful. So it was quite a thrill. You know, he'd do those kinds of things. Wherever he went, he always made sure that you felt like you were the most important person in the world at that time. And that was just a thrill. Absolute thrill.
You told me a story about that he often told you to show up at the stadium for some tickets.
Yeah, he would offer the kids, he goes, who wants to go to tonight's game? And I'll tell you the one time he asked who wanted to go to the game. And, you know, of course, everybody raised their hands and said, okay, yeah, well, here's what you got to do is you got to meet me at the press gate at 6:00. And so we'd get on the bi-state bus, which was the public transportation, and ride the bus down to the stadium. And these are 10-year-old kids up to 18-year-old kids. And sure enough, Jack Buck would be waiting outside the press gate. You know, he wouldn't send an assistant or some other, you know, person down there. He met us all at 6:00 and said, hey, is everybody here? And he'd make sure that we'd get into the game. Well, we didn't only get into the game, we got into the press box. And he showed us where all the hot dogs and all the sodas and all the chips and all that kind of stuff. He made sure that we ate and had a great time and introduced us around to everybody in the broadcast booth. And we just have a great time. I can almost imagine, you know, a bunch of kids scrambling, each finding their own way to the stadium, and their parents not having a clue where these kids had all dispersed. Well, back then, we just, you know, like I said, we were 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever. We just say, Mom, we're going to the ball game. Okay, make sure you get home and get home on time. And we'd take the Manchester Kirkwood number 56 bus. That bus left the stadium at 10:10, and there was another one at 11:10. And if you missed the 11:10, you were stuck downtown. Can you imagine that? You know, sending a bunch of kids off on the city bus to go to downtown baseball. That's been happening in Cardinal land for a long time.
Sounds awesome.
It does sound pretty cool, doesn't it?
Sounds great.
You know, the way he has that reverence for Jack Buck, and one of the questions I asked him after that he expounded on a little bit, I said, I can just imagine that they all wore these red blazers and like maybe polyester pants, you know, I mean, like just looking sharp. Now let's launch off of that. Who's your favorite baseball writer or baseball announcer? Let's go Seth first here.
Well, obviously, with my journalism background, you know, I kind of lean towards the writers. And when Andy McCullough was covering the team, I mean, obviously it's like easy to like a guy, you know, when you've got some teams that are World Series contenders every year, but his writing style, I really enjoyed him. Even when he left Kansas City and went to Los Angeles, I got a digital subscription to the LA Times so I could keep reading his stories. And for me personally, you know, you look at the stuff you write before I started reading his stories and the stuff I wrote after. I felt like I took a lot of his stuff and styles and kind of put it into my own thing, and I thought made me better at my job just by reading his stuff. But yeah, I was a big McCullough fan and still am today.
I like the way that he could kind of throw out a question that could maybe even be a little snarky, but he would ask it with kind of reverence, like when he would talk about black magic that Ned Yost and his lineup construction. And people would, of course, pepper him with questions about those kind of things. And he always seemed to know how to kind of have some fun with it, but not discount it because it kind of worked, Yeah. And I loved the balance that he brought to that.
Yeah, his relationship with Ned Yost was really awesome to see their back and forth. And when he got with the Athletic and Ned Yost retired, he wrote a real good piece about him. It wasn't really about any sports or any games or anything. It was just stuff that happened between him and Ned behind the scenes. So, and it was a great read.
How about you, Kameron?
The Cardinals have had a lot of great, I think of Derek Gold, just a great writer who's been with the team forever. More recently, Katie Wu, who's with the Dodgers now, but she's with the Athletic and just great. But it's hard for me not to, when I think of my life as a baseball fan, I just hear Mike Shannon's voice. Like I said, I'm transported back to a time when I'm catching fly balls with my brother. My dad's hitting me fly balls in the backyard, and we can hear Mike Shannon just butchering people's names. Poor Brad Osmos. And, just a tough go there. And, Mike was a legend within the game in a sense that he changed the way he called the game as the game went on. And that absolutely had to do with the amount of beverages he had to drink throughout that game. But just loved his voice, loved his character. He's who I think of when I think of Cardinal baseball, and just again, baseball has a way of taking you back. I loved hearing his voice at night because that meant Cardinal baseball, and it meant we were in a good spot.
Okay, I'm going to go next and let Chris finish this up on this topic. Bill James opened up a whole new world of baseball to me, and I can't tell you that I understood all of the mathematical graphs and things that he would put in, but he could explain things better about statistics and what was relevant and what wasn't. And he would do it by asking questions. And so one of my favorite all-time essays he wrote was, does Lonnie Smith's inability to field in left field actually hurt the Royals? Because, people would watch him. He had the nickname Skates for a reason.
Yeah.
So he analyzed each error that he had made in that particular season and determined that it really had almost no impact whatsoever on the game. It was either they were far enough ahead, far enough behind. It was early in the game. There was plenty.
And you outfielders thought you were important.
Yep, zero importance. That's amazing because I have one of my favorite videos out there is called Heck of a Year, and it breaks down the Cardinals' '85 season, and it has Whitey Herzog quoted as saying, if the National League had the DH, Lonnie Smith would have died a Cardinal, and that's because of those times, they had to play defense. They had to, manufacture runs, and that wasn't Lonnie Smith. And so that's a great memory right there. That's good.
So that baseball abstract, which was just a new thing. I mean, this is a custodian at a pork and beans plant in Lawrence who inserted himself into the whole national baseball dynamic and ultimately got hired as a consultant by the Red Sox and get him to David Ortiz and get to a world championship. And that's just an amazing baseball story right there.
Incredible.
But I would just read that thing cover to cover, and probably should have been doing other things as a young man, but I would read that thing cover to cover and just live with it and try to memorize it, and just loved his writing as well as his perspective on baseball.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on that. I've got a writer that I really like for the Royals. He's been kind of out of the spotlight, but he comes back once in a while to some podcasts in Kansas City. But Rany Jazayerli came up with the sabermetrics and Bill James and Baseball Prospectus, and that whole wave of people in the late 70s and through the 80s that started to dive into all of this, which has really transformed baseball in a lot of ways. But he's a huge Royals fan and knows just about every piece of Royals trivia and history that you can imagine, and tries to relate it to the viewer now. So shout out to him. But I also grew up on the West Coast, and there was no baseball or professional baseball where I grew up in Arizona. So Vin Scully was the voice of the Dodgers forever. And if you turned on the radio then to listen to a baseball game like you did in the Midwest, on the West Coast, it was Vin Scully and his voice, and you knew it meant baseball. And all of the players that he had through the years that he got to call, all those great Dodgers games and Dodgers legends, even going back to New York and then that transition to LA. So Vin Scully was my favorite growing up.
And I love that. And it seems like we may have a whole nother podcast someday, because for some reason, writers come out of the Kansas City area. I mean, Jeff Passan has a Kansas City background. Rob Nyer with Rany Jazayerli, Joe Posnanski, I mean, there are some amazing writers that love baseball, and some of them were here for some pretty bad Royals baseball at the time, and so they had to be creative writers, apparently. But there's a whole genre of writers, and a lot of them come from this Midwest area, and it's pretty cool. Okay, so let's get to this year. We had expectations for the Royals. There are people predicting on MLB Network that they're going to win 100 games or something. That hasn't exactly happened yet.
No, it has not.
And it's not likely to happen given the statistics at this point. But they've at least rallied, and they're on a little winning streak, and they're right in it at a game and a half back in a fairly, middle of the road kind of a division where they can do some damage if they do catch fire. What have you seen so far, Seth?
Well, the other day I heard this, and this is kind of a good thing for the Royals. They said if you're a fan of an American League team and they're not very good right now, don't worry, nobody's very good in the American League. So there's definitely a little more room for error early on than there typically is in an MLB season, but they are kind of turning it around, and they had that pretty bad slump right there. And I just kept telling myself they can't be this bad. They're not this bad. They have too much talent to be this bad. And then towards the end of that losing streak, I was kind of starting to question myself. Well, maybe they are, but they've kind of shown here this last road trip and then the other night that they're not that bad. They are I think still a playoff contender. I think really the last 3 years people have kind of thought they're a playoff contender with the expanded playoffs, and they got it in 24, missed it in 25, and I think it's very much in play this year yet, but they're gonna have to avoid bad stretches like that for sure.
I saw this the standings the other day, and I looked at the run differential. Okay, get this. The Yankees are plus 76. The next best team in the division, who's only a game and a half behind him, plus 11.
Is that Tampa?
Tampa.
Wow.
The best team in the Central is Detroit at plus 17. The best team in the West is plus 3. I mean, it's the Yankees and then nobody else, and yet we know the Yankees don't do that in the playoffs.
No, yeah.
Yeah, with a new format, you just have to stay at about 500, win every other game, and then have a little streak somewhere in there where you win 8 out of 10, and you are in the race now. Not like it used to be when we were growing up in the 70s and 80s, where you had to kind of break away and have a really good record, when there's only 2 divisions and then 4. But with the expanded wild card now, you just got to hang in there. The Royals can build. They have one of the best, probably 3 players in the game. And wherever you want to rank them, and you just go from there. You can obviously tell this in this little streak when Bobby Baseball warmed up. The Royals warmed up, and he kind of sets the tone, offense and defense for the Royals. And when he's cooking, watch out. And it seems kind of everybody, those younger players, feed off of him. And last night was no exception for that, because Bobby, he had a home run, I think, to break up the no-hitter, and then all of a sudden you look at the scoreboard and the Royals had 4 runs, just like that, So
When I think you mentioned to me, we were talking the other day about this during that slump that they couldn't get out of early. You said, early on in the year, Bobby Witt had been on base like 28 times, and he'd only scored, I believe he'd only scored one run.
Yeah.
That's, he's been hot really from the start. The power hadn't been there until here recently, but he's incredible. Just as a baseball fan, I know the Midwest doesn't get as much love as the coast, but Bobby Witt is, he's one of the best baseball players just in the game right now. He's so exciting. He's fast. He's got power. He can field it. He's just a blast to watch.
Yeah, his defense is insane. That play he had last night was just, a play like that helps you offensively, because then you get to the dugout and everyone's pumped up and ready to go when they see a guy do something like that on defense. So he helps them so many ways. And if you're needing a guy to set the tone for your team, that's a pretty good guy to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He certainly is. And it's one of those rare times when being in a smaller market helps. Philadelphia and Boston can their managers with similar starts to the Royals. And here we see
the pressure. Yeah, the pressure
of it.
Mm-hmm.
And 10 days later, we're a game and a half out.
Yeah.
Talk about St. Louis came into this year and people were like, I don't know. Who are they? What's the face of the franchise?
We got rid of everybody that was like a really well-known commodity at that time, and a lot of guys who were I mean, admittedly past their prime. Arenado's hadn't been at his best for a few years. Wilson Contreras was up and down. We got rid of Sonny Gray, our best pitcher. So I think the Cardinals were projected to win 69 or 70 games, depending on where you looked. And we're off to a start that I think has everybody who follows the Cardinals pretty surprised. I think we're taping this, they're 21-14, and that is not even remotely what anybody who saw this roster, at the beginning of the year thought. Kind of became a joke amongst some of my friends, like, the beginning of Major League. Who are these guys? Who are these guys? A lot of just young guys who have started out hot, but we'll see in the dog days, right? Like, we'll see, can the pitching, can it hold up? Can these young guys, when they go through that first really brutal slump, can they find a way out of it? So it is fun to, as a Cardinal fan this year, because the last few years has been nothing but
gives you some hope.
Yeah, it's exactly, like, we've been just underachieving for years now. So to have a team right now that's a lot of fun to watch, I think if people haven't wanted to watch the Cardinals for a while because they just don't like the Cardinals, this team's actually a little more fun. They're young, they kind of play with their hair on fire and just run a lot. They play great defense coming into today. I think they're third in baseball in defensive runs saved. Like, they're a blast to watch.
And we've had some players like Jordan Walker on the Royals where you thought, our best prospect, how can they be bad, right? They're supposed to be the next great player, but you just have to have some patience sometimes. We saw that with Moustakas and Gordon, if you're a Royals fan, and they were patient, and he's had a great start coming out the gates for the Cardinals.
Yeah, between Walker, Walker's already totaled his first 2 seasons home runs in this early start of the year. He's got 10 this year. But then you got a young kid like J.J. Weatherholt, who's, again, coming out, and he's showed a glove, but he's a great leadoff guy. He's already scored almost 30 runs for us. Like, he's doing great. And then, we've got a pitching staff that's just makes us nervous every night, but they find a way to piece it together. But I don't know. It's a fun team because it's got potential. I don't expect them to like make a ton of noise, but it is fun while it's going on right now anyway.
The all-time great off-season pronouncement ever by a player was Alex Gordon in 2012 telling us he was going to dominate. And he had done nothing like that up to that point. And then, by golly, he came out and he just started ripping it.
This is a very small moment in time, but I know you guys in this room will remember this. There was that tiny amount of time where I thought Alex Gordon was going to be a Cardinal. You guys remember that? He was in the offseason. He was a free agent, and there was a lot of talk about St. Louis signing him because he was such a great glove. They wanted to get kind of back to that idea of getting a better outfield. They were kind of moving on from Holiday, and it was that tiny moment where, like, Cardinal fans were like, I think we could steal Alex Gordon from the Royals. Of course, that did not occur, and he became a legend in Kansas City.
So we're going to talk about some technical changes and some trends in baseball and stuff, but I'm going to start you off with things that have happened in the last week, because this is kind of like when you're talking about baseball, you don't really know what you're going to see on any given night. So on May 2nd, Cincinnati Reds pitchers tied a major league record by walking 7 straight Pittsburgh Pirate batters. That hadn't happened for 43 years. Not good. Not good. Not a fun watching experience.
That's not great.
That's not what you want. Oh, my goodness. My son's a huge Ellie De La Cruz fan, and so we were actually watching that game. He just said, Dad, how many is that? Well, we're up to 6 now, and there was another one.
Oh, okay. That same day, the Kansas City Royals walked up to the plate and struck out 16 times in 9 innings, 17 times in 10 innings, had 0 walks, and 0 home runs, and still won the game, which is the first time in Major League Baseball history that you've had that combination of things. I mean, that's insane.
I'd say that's baseball, but that was the first time in MLB history, so that's not really baseball.
But it feels like baseball.
It feels like baseball.
I love when you hear the stat, in 120 years of baseball, this has never happened. Like, how is that even possible that all the combinations of players and games that we've had, like Cole Reagan's had a line the other night, like it was like 5.1 innings pitched, 4 hits, so many strikeouts, that we've never had it. Like the scorigami they have sometimes in football. It was a pitcher like line, like we've never seen that line before from a pitcher. I'm like, how is that? All the pitchers in the last 120 years, no one's ever had that pitching line. So baseball is a game of, you'll see a lot of things you've seen before, but once in a while you'll see things you've never seen before.
Okay, so there are these trends. Some of them happen in Major League Baseball. Some of them are happening in other sports, but the trend is really about technology. In college softball this year, we've seen this explosion, And what has happened is 45 teams, last year was 10 teams using this technology, 45 teams using it this year. Doppler radar, synchronized high-speed cameras to quantify ball rotation, velocity, and location. And this is college softball. It's become a cheat code for pitcher and umpire tendencies. And what's happened is walks have gone up. They've doubled to 14% of at-bats. And home runs are up 51% in power conferences where this technology is kind of concentrated in the power conferences.
Just from last
2
year?
years.
Oh, in 2 years. Wow.
In 2 years, 51%.
jump.
And then you see Kendall Wells of Oklahoma, 36 home runs as a freshman, broke the record by 5 and is one short of the national record all time in college softball. I mean, technology is here and it's affecting a lot of what we're watching. Is it good? Is it scary? What is it?
I think to me, the biggest thing I think it makes more difficult, and we'll see as time goes, but Mr. Ock and I, I'm very fortunate to get to work with him at school, and there's all these conversations about eras. And I think what the technology does is makes it harder for us to compare eras.
Yeah.
So I think the advantages of players having this technology in place, but you can argue the other way is they're seeing more pitchers and they're seeing, more pitches. They're seeing a bunch of different things, but I'd say it does make it hard to compare eras. It'll be interesting to see, where this lines up in history, but I think it does make it tough to compare a player like Ted Williams to, a current player like Aaron Judge.
What does it mean? Like, when you look at Babe Ruth and he ate a lot of hot dogs.
Yeah.
And he had skinny little legs and he ran funny and, and people go, well, he wouldn't do this in this era. But look at the body type and what he did in spite of that.
Yeah.
You almost wonder, like, if he was doing today's training methods with his natural talent on top of that, what kind of freak athlete would he have been? If instead of eating hot dogs and beer, he was choking down whey protein shakes, and doing these off-season workouts. Like, what was his off-season like?
Yeah.
I don't know probably how many times he probably picked a bat up from the end of one season to spring training the next year. I mean, I just don't feel like they really cared about that back then.
Is he in a cage talking about his launch angle?
Yeah.
They just didn't have the data. Like, you can go to a major league game this year and you're like, why is the second baseman standing over there by the bag? It's because they know this hitter is going to hit it to that spot more than any other place on the field, especially if our pitcher knows he's pitching this player outside, he's going to hit it there. And then you'll see the ground ball right to the fielder doesn't even have to move. And you're like, wow. But back when Babe Ruth was playing, I think every shortstop and second baseman probably played in the same spot in the dirt. Every batter, every game, they wore out that spot. They didn't move around. The center fielder didn't move around. Maybe a little bit. Oh, move over. Like, your coach may stand up in the dugout and do this a couple spots because last time he pulled the ball. Right now, they've got so much data and tendencies on every player that when a ball's hit to an outfielder and he doesn't move and catch it, I thought, well, that was data. Data got that out.
And I think Ted Williams, this isn't official, but you kind of go through baseball history. He was one of the first ones that they really started employing the shift on because he was not going to look to dink a ball the other way for a single. And so he was one of you see pictures of they're all the way over there, So when people there a few years ago when they were talking about banning the shift, they're like, oh, this is bad for the sport. It's been happening for a long time, but at the same time, I love baseball because, it comes and goes. We've got the same things that were happening back then are happening now. That's the great thing about baseball. The dimensions are perfect. You see guys getting beat by a half step. That was happening then. That's happening now. But just the technology they have is kind of crazy to think about some of the amount of information they have. And you almost wonder, like, is it actually benefiting hitters or is it too much? Like, is it too much information? I don't know.
There's things we're seeing now that are amazing. I mean, Shohei Ohtani is amazing. Mason Miller. I mean, what are his stats? I mean,
he finally gave up a run.
Oh, he did.
He did. He finally gave up a run.
I mean, his strikeout and whiff rate, it's like wiffle ball. And we're seeing these things in real time right now. It's kind of
you can go through eras, and we've had great hitters and great pitchers in every era. How did Nolan Ryan pitch 7 no-hitters? How did he pitch all the pitches? And then we have guys, he's at 70 pitches, pull him. Meanwhile, Nolan Ryan's out there, pitch 134 is a strike at 98 miles an hour. They're going to keep him in there. But, there's things that change because the data has said, pull that pitcher before he gets to 80 pitches, because at 80 pitches plus, he's going to give up, his ERA shoots up. So we have the data.
Third time through, right? That's a big thing right now. The third time through, the batting average of the opponent goes up, their OPS goes up. And yeah, it's always interesting to see, which organizations are really, really focused on that. And then some of the organizations are still more like, hey, let's let our guys make choices and our managers make decisions, instead of just, this is when it gets third time through, they're done.
Yeah. Noah Cameron needs to be a guy third time through. Yeah. You just sit him down.
Yeah.
So
yeah. A couple of years ago when the pitch clock came in, we were debating, how that would work out and stuff. That seems to have been adapted quickly. I love the way the games move along.
That's a win. That's a win-win-win, because I think it was like seamless. Like the people in the crowd, the general fan doesn't even notice. Game's moving at a better pace and everybody likes it. And so that was a win, I think.
So this article in Wall Street Journal says, in defense of umpires. Now, there's a tough position to take sometimes. Defensive umpires, and says robots are killing baseball, is what he said. Now, his particular approach to this is that we come to see a game and then an audit breaks out.
That's a good quote. Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
It's a good quote. He said, instead of pitchers versus hitters, it's umpires versus robots. He says baseball is an art, not a science. Statistics aren't what makes the game great. It's the people on the field, including the umpire. Take that where you will.
Yeah. Ak, you've been one of the biggest proponents for we've taken review too far. And I think I have to agree with that. I remember when baseball in the playoffs first put this out there, like, hey, all we're going to do is make sure if a home run is a home run or not. And that's what they started with. And then it's just slowly become this where now we're to the point with the ABS system. If we have it in place, why do we have the umpire? Because that's where it's headed, unfortunately. And I do say unfortunately, because I don't know, Seth, you watch a game and you see that little box pop up and it's 0.01 inches away from a ball or strike. I don't feel like that's what the intent should be. Everybody's going to have their opinion on it. I know umpires want to get it right, but I also know I miss kind of like this guy has this zone, and that. I don't know.
It's kind of like it killed the pop-up slide.
A little bit.
Because the pop-up slide is, you can't do it without...
You come off the base about a fraction of an inch. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I love ABS, and maybe that's just because I have Salvador Perez as the catcher for my team.
There you go.
He does not lose.
He's a cheat code back there.
He will, if it's a strike and they don't call the strike, he knows it's a strike and he'll get it for you. I do think sometimes, though, like in the Royals game last night, there was one that was literally 0.1 inch off the plate. That's a little ridiculous. Yeah. But even before ABS, I was always the guy that when they'd have the box and they'd throw one and it's not in the box and they ring your guy up, I was always the guy going, robot umps now.
Yep.
And
or take the box off. I was always just take that box off. I don't need to see it because I'm just going to get mad.
Yeah, that's all the box did was make me mad. And now I've got my ABS, I guess, and we're a month into the season.
It is entertaining when CB Buckner has to stand there and he tries to ring somebody up and really do it with some gusto, and they go, no, wait just a minute. Tap the head. And
early in the year, there was a Red Sox game and I got to watch some of this. It was hilarious. They used their challenges early and often because Buckner was already having a rough night. But they did lose two of them pretty fast, and they were done. And let me tell you, CB
light bulb went off.
He ran with it.
Watch this.
He was like, welcome back, folks. Yeah. It's the ump show. But yeah, and I think that's the point of it, is to make sure we don't have these egregious misses, and especially in big spots. But man, it's kind of the whole like basketball. Did it hit their fingernail? Baseball, did they pop up this quarter of an inch off the... That's not what it's for. It's to make sure we don't miss the big stuff.
Spirit of the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Even I'd go and say the soul of the game. Have we sucked some of the soul of baseball away because some umpires, you knew he had a wider zone or a tighter zone or things like that.
Yep.
Neighborhood plays. Miguel Garcia earlier, I think about a week ago, he tried to come across the bag and turn a double play. He released it before he actually stepped on second. They brought the runner back, and okay, well, that's probably not what that was meant for. Right. But
yeah, there's a lot of that.
Yeah,
this author of the article, he had some good points. Jonathan Shapiro. He was the author of another book, and it made me kind of rethink maybe whether this guy needed to evaluate things. The name of his book is How to Be Abe Lincoln. 7 steps to leading a legendary life. And I go, you're going to have a hard time convincing me that you're a technology welcoming kind of person if you're writing books about Abe Lincoln and his stovepipe hat. Although he was a heck of a man.
He was a heck of a man. I don't know that if we would have said ABS to him, he might have been confused.
Yes, he might have. Excellent point. Excellent point. Okay, we got more stuff here. So just give me real quick whatever angle you want to take on either downtown baseball or affordability of the game and maybe concerns or excitement that you have about it.
My real quick thought is I like the idea of the downtown baseball stadium. I don't think affordability is getting to be in question on all these stadiums, no matter where they're at. I don't think it's going to impact it that much. My real quick view on it is there's 2 camps on this, and they're both a little outrageous. I think it's okay to like Kauffman Stadium, love the stadium, be sad that it's going, and still be excited for a downtown baseball stadium, because, I don't know. That's just my thought. You can have it both, and it doesn't make you wrong.
I always remember when I was growing up, Metro North was a big thing. You guys remember that? Now it's a parking lot.
Yeah.
Right? So things evolved, things changed. I loved Metro North. It can't function.
Now you hit golf balls where Metro North used to be at tee shots out across the.
How about you? What do you see?
You know, I my first baseball games growing up when I went to a stadium was Busch Stadium 2. And when they tore down Busch Stadium 2 and put up 3 in 06, it was really cool just for the fact that they started transforming the neighborhood around it. They have Ballpark Village there now, and you can go whenever you want, before or after, and spend a ton of time down there enjoying. There's bars, there's restaurants. They've got the Cardinals Hall of Fame down there. They've got all kinds of cool things. And so it's really like this incredible space wrapped up just to celebrate baseball in general. And it's a great place to be. You know, people don't even have to go to the game, and they still get to kind of experience the camaraderie of a baseball game together, because they've got huge screens out there. And I have no doubt that the Royals are going to transform that area into something awesome that people are going to love. But again, change is tough. I'm sure it's going to be tough for some people who've only known it kind of in that area. But it's going to be hard to be upset about downtown baseball once you really get down there. It's going to be great, I think.
When the Sprint Center went up, first event I went to in the Sprint Center, we parked in that cool parking lot that's right next to it. Big mistake. It was about an hour, 45 minutes to get out of there. I learned real quick that you could park 2 blocks up the street at 13th and Oak and head over the old ASB bridge and be out of town really fast.
Yep.
But you had to plan a little bit about where you parked and walked. And then that place, which was promoted as an NBA, NHL home, never got one of those teams and still is successful. And the Power and Light is legendary.
I think it's cool to know, like, you can go to say, hey, let's go eat, and then be like, you know what, actually, let's go to a ball game. I think that's kind of a cool dynamic that they're going to have now.
One thing I'm kind of looking forward to is going down to a Royals game, maybe parking at River Market, taking the streetcar down to the game.
Oh, yeah.
It's been several years now, but me and my wife were in New York City. We were staying on Times Square, and we rode the train out to Citi Field in Queens and watched the Mets. And on the way back in, you know, that subway car is almost like a post-game show from a fan's perspective. And I think that'll be kind of neat to see on the streetcar, you know, get a bunch of fans in a streetcar heading back to their vehicles, and just the general thoughts about the game from your peers. You know, it's something that was really fun that night in New York, and I'm kind of looking forward to that in Kansas City.
Yeah, I've had that experience in Boston as well.
Yeah.
Going to a game on.
Remember walking back to our hotel from games, and just that's exactly right. Like, everybody's excited, especially after a win. Everyone's excited. You know, you find instant best friends on that walk back. You know, because everybody just shared that experience. So that's pretty cool.
Okay, the last thing I'm going to throw out there is what's going to happen in this baseball season. Give me a prediction.
Oh man, I think there's so much parity in baseball, so it'll be a lot of fun. If I had to just come up with somebody, I mean, I'd say it's kind of boring, but I think the Dodgers are going to definitely be a force again, just because they've got too much talent not to. But I kind of like the Braves as a bounce back team that just struggled. They did just lose Acuna, so we'll see. But I like them to bounce back and maybe challenge the Dodgers in the American League. I really think it's going to be something weird. I do. I think it's going to be a team that just kind of gets hot at the right time. There's just so many teams clumped together. So I know that's not, I'm kind of riding the fence there, but I do think it's going to be a weird year, and that for baseball is a lot of fun.
There's so much parity in baseball that I think the Dodgers are going to win the World Series for the third year in a row.
Yeah, that's a good point, though.
Yeah, I don't know. The National League looks stacked right now. Cameron was talking about the Cardinals earlier, and man, the National League Central, is there a team under 500 in that division? I mean, that is a tough division. But I'm like Cameron, the Dodgers just have so much talent, and I think by the end of the season, they'll be putting it all together. American League, it's hard to say right now because there's obviously the Yankees on run differential are kind of head and shoulders, but it's like Chris was saying, you don't trust the Yankees to do anything in October these days. So it could be, I mean, the Blue Jays were kind of a surprise last year. I think, like Cameron said, you're probably going to see another team that is kind of surprised. So for the Royals, that's good news. Just get in, and you never know. Maybe you're the surprise team this year and get yourself a shot at the Dodgers and just see what happens.
That would be a lot of fun. Two great blue teams.
Yeah, we'll take blue. We'll take blue anytime we can get it. I think the Royals will be around 500, a little more, a little less, and be in the race at the end, and that'll be exciting. I'm with you guys. I think the Dodgers are head and shoulders above everybody else because they're so consistent in the way that they win, and then they get better as we get to the postseason. They've got guys that know their roles, and they've got the best player on the planet, and all those things going for them. They got a great manager, been there, done that. But look for a surprise team that every year a surprise team gets hot. The Nationals, I remember that team.
Yeah. Diamondbacks made a run. Rangers.
You know, all these teams that just find a way to get hot at the end and make it in the dance and then do well. And shout out to Seth for the 7 train going to Citi Field. One of my favorite things to do is take the 7 train to Citi Field. It is a lot of fun. The 4 train to the Bronx, it's a little dicey sometimes, but the 7 train out to Citi Field and to Queens to see a ball game is a good time.
I mean, really, ultimately, every fan, and this is why I love the third wild card, every fan just wants their team to be playing meaningful baseball in September. And it's like, I think both teams have, you know, with the starts they've had, and the Royals are climbing back already. They're only a game out of their division. Like, you put teams in a position to kind of have hope. That's kind of what baseball, I think, represents a lot to so many people. Is just
we're one little winning streak.
Close.
We're so close, you know, 4 out of 5 or 6 out of 8, and we're right there.
Yep.
Used to be just the hope of spring, but when it laps into the summer and you get to September and you've still got hope, it's a good year. It's a good year. Mm-hmm. Chris, you got anything to wind us down here?
I think I'll be watching the Royals tonight. After all this talk, I just like baseball, like everything about it, like its history and tradition. And also one more shout out to Seth. Seth's night, but he's in first in our fantasy baseball league.
Yeah.
As we speak.
Sorry about Scooble.
That's rough.
I had a couple guys on the hook with trades there too, and now those are out.
Those aren't going to happen now.
I was going to bolster my offense at the cost.
Timing is everything. Timing is everything.
You've built a good team, though.
Should have pulled the trigger a little sooner.
Okay, just want to thank Seth and thank Cameron for coming in. It's fun. The time goes by quick. I just want to thank our many listeners at Show Me Sports Legacies.